have consistency and chemistry. These inspiring words from Roger Staubach. I welcome you all in the third day of this workshop come FDP on optimum approaches towards IoT system design with your consistent zeal to dive in more depths of IoT system design today. On behalf of whole SDIET family, I welcome again Mr. Vikas Kumar Sinha to enlighten us with his in-depth knowledge of IoT system design. Mr. Vikas has till now driven us towards the field of IoT system design with its basics and architecture in such an easy way that we have already started thinking of how to start making things around us IoT based. I request Vikas sir to make us more acquainted with the field now. Vikas sir, kindly start the session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for handing over. So today's session, actually, we will talk about how we will design a IoT system. And today we are going to design a smart air conditioner system. So we just took an example from what Savita Bhan ma'am told me yesterday that okay, let's design a smart air conditioner. So we will go and talk about how if we have to design a smart air conditioner, what are the things that we need to consider and how to design on the edge, how to design on the cloud, and how to integrate these two things, and how can you integrate some mobile applications, how can you integrate some smart home assistant kind of configurations into the design. And then once we talk about the integrated architecture, we'll also talk about how the architecture has fulfilled all the major requirements that an IoT system should always fulfill. So without further delay, let me share my screen and then we'll dive a bit deeper into it. So let's get started. Okay, so as we just mentioned that today we are going to discuss about how we will design a real IoT system, and we are going to take an example of smart air conditioner. So let's go about it. So in today's agenda, we basically have, a user's perspective of how a user perceives that a smart air conditioner should be and how a user gives his or her requirement. And if you recall from day one, when I spoke about a product life cycle. So in the product life cycle before development, there is a phase where we have the ideation phase. So this first thing is about the ideation phase. When we have the idea, we get the idea that what we want to design, what features we want to have. After that, we'll recap on what are the golden rules of designing any kind of system. And today we will relate it more into IoT system. And then we'll talk about how a user's perspective gets changed when a designer looks into it. So how a designer will perceive that system, what considerations he or she will put forward when they are going to design an IoT system. So we'll talk about that. And after that, we'll talk about 2 or 3 major portions of this smart air conditioner architecture that we are going to build today. So we'll talk about edge architecture, then we'll talk about its cloud architecture, and then we'll talk about the interaction architecture. In interaction architecture, we'll talk about the mobile application kind of scenario that will develop. Basically, it will be mobile application as well as an Alexa application. So we'll talk about these two things, which will be followed by the integrated architecture, which will have all these 3 components, that is the edge and the cloud and the interaction layer. And we'll discuss how this architecture really works with each other, how different components interact with each other and make us to achieve the real goal of having a smart air conditioner. And then we'll talk about how this architecture really addresses the points that we discussed in golden rules of an IoT system design. So before proceeding to the technicality, let me clarify 2 or 3 things. In today's session, since it's going to be a bit more technical, so I may pause in between for a minute on a slide if I feel like we need to put some thoughts in it, and I will let that slide appear on the screen for a while if need arises. It's not compulsory. And then we'll all, I mean, when we go about designing the architecture, we'll try to correlate it with the actual user's perspective, user's requirement, as well as the designer's requirement. So as we go about designing the subsystem, we'll try to correlate both the things from the user's as well as designer's perspective. So here I'm going to present a list of what a user can think of when they think of a smart air conditioner. So first thing that will come in and in anyone's mind is that it should be accessible locally as well as remotely. So they should be able to control it from local in from the house as well as when they are from outside. They are controlling it from outside. And then the second feature that will make a air conditioner really a smart air conditioner is a feature of having self diagnostics as well as the parts health check, so that if there is something that is going to break down, so we can inform the vendor or the vendor gets notified so that they can send the preventive health checkup or a preventive maintenance kind of thing. Then the next feature that should be in a smart air conditioner is integration to the current smart home ecosystem. So suppose you bring in a smart device, for example, here it is an air conditioner, and if it is cannot be connected or integrated to your existing smart home ecosystem, then it will be very difficult and almost useless. The fourth feature that we'll like to have over here in the system is that it should be able to be controlled by a smart home assistant, for example, Alexa or a Google Home. Then, since this smart aircon is going to generate some data, so it will be really useful if we can see and draw some insights from the usage pattern as well as the temperature map of that air conditioner. Then we'll also try to have some algorithm with which the air conditioner can automatically learn from its machine learning algorithm so that it does a kind of climate control kind of feature so that it tunes itself based on your preference, based on your lifestyle. So you don't really need to all time use your remote to adjust different features of the air conditioner. And I just mentioned about this climate control related thing. So it should be able to adjust its setting based on what the weather is. So these are the major features that a user may would like to see in a smart air conditioner. And in today's design, we are going to address all these features in the system that we are going to design. So maybe I will take a pause of 20 seconds. You can just look at this screen and just try to digest what we are going to design so that when we design, you can correlate. So we need a remote as well as a local access. We need self-diagnostics as well as part health check. We need integration with the current smart home ecosystem. We also want to have an integration of smart home assistants. We also want to see the usage pattern based on how the air conditioner is being used at what time, up to which temperature. And we would also like to have an artificial intelligence in the system so that it can learn from users profile, from users usage pattern, so that it can fine tune itself to give a better experience. And at the very same time, we would also like to have a climate control kind of condition that is based on your local area's weather condition, that it tunes itself accordingly. And now we'll talk about or recap what we have learned in first 2 days of the session about how shall we go about designing any kind of system. And today we'll talk a bit more how to tune it in terms of IoT. So the first feature or the first thing that we should always keep in mind when we are designing an IoT system is that it should be always in line with what user wants or what the real goal is. And it should be very easy to use. There shouldn't be much requirement of flipping down the pages of user manual to operate your system that you have designed. Second thing, that your system should be modular and there should be some subsystem components. So it should be modular enough that if you want to integrate or disintegrate some parts, it's very easy. If you want to validate or if you want to really tweak around, it's quite easy. Then yesterday we talked about three S of an IoT system. The very first thing was security. So your system should be totally secure at all the layers that you have, be it cloud level, be it edge level, be it your mobile application level. It should always be secure. And the next S that we discussed yesterday was the scalability. So when you are going for a scale, when you are going to increase the number of devices in your ecosystem, your your design should be capable of adapting to the increase in the number of devices. And the third S that we discussed yesterday is the robust design, that your system should be robust enough that if there is some failure of the connectivity, be it from the cloud, be it from the Wi-Fi, be it at any level of the three-layered architecture, your system should always work. Your system should not go out of operation. Then another aspect of any system design is that it should be easy to bring up. It should be fast to bring up. It shouldn't be like we are designing something that is going to take a long time to design, and when we are going to introduce that product to market, the market is already captured by the competitors. So when we are going to design any system, we have to think of different approaches with which we can cut down our research and development time. Next aspect is that it should be upgradable to the future requirements. And I would like to add another point over here, that not just the next version, it should always be able to upscale its features. What I mean to say, sometimes you might have seen that we have this firmware upgrade kind of capability. So why we do the firmware upgrade? Whenever we find out a bug, whenever we find out a new feature that can be incorporated with the existing hardware, then we should be able to upgrade it. So the software upgrade is an integral part of your IoT system. So again, I will stop for a while, for a few seconds on this slide so that you can look into it. So again, I will recite all the important points. First thing, it should be user centric. It should always keep in mind that what user wants or what is our ultimate goal. It should be a modular design so that you can disintegrate and integrate new modules. You can easily debug the things. And if you want to disassociate or add in new feature, it should be easily possible. And then we come to the three S of an IoT system design, that it should be secure, it should be scalable, and it should be sustainable. That means it should have a robust operation. And then from a company's perspective, the bring up time should be fast enough that you can bring your device to the market as soon as possible with the minimum viable features. And it should always be upgradable to the next software version at least, so that when you are going to add in any feature, it should be easily incorporatable. And same way, another thing in the upgradation point is that you should always have another product in your roadmap, so that whenever you are going to go into reduction phase or the stagnant phase of your product, then you should be able to devise the next version of your system. So now we already spoke about how a user perceives a system, how they give the features. But when the feature comes to an engineer or to the developer, I mean, if you remember on day one when we talked about the product life cycle, so the first two phases we already discussed, like what are the users' requirements and how are we going to plan to go about the development of the product. After that, the product development phase starts. And whenever the product development phase starts, we first look into the design considerations. So let's talk about the design considerations based on the requirement that we have for the smart air conditioner that we just spoke about. And as you can see, one star on my screen, it says that you should never forget that you have to have security at all the layers. So this is the most important aspect of any IoT system design. So we have to always keep that thing in mind. So the first thing that a designer or an IoT system designer will think of is the device management, because you are eventually going to connect lots of devices. So the very first thing that we should always consider is that the commissioning of the device should be effortless. That means when you are going to bring up that device to your platform, it should be effortless. It should be very easy. Second thing is the fleet management. From fleet management, what we mean that when you have devices on the platform, you should be able to configure it, you should be able to monitor it, you should be able to remove some of the devices which are redundant, and you should be able to add up new devices as and when need arises. And the third aspect is the device firmware upgrade. So whenever there is some security compromise or some security update or some feature update, you should be able to manage your device in such a way that you can easily and securely upgrade your firmware. That is on the device side. That's why I specifically use the term firmware. Second thing is the device control. So we commissioned the device, we have the device now in our fleet. Now we should be able to control it. And when we are talking about controlling it, the first thing that should come in our mind is that it should have low latency. That means you should be able to control your device without much of delay. If there is a considerable delay, then the user experience will be very bad. Second thing in the device control is that it should be able to operate with a hub or without a hub. So let me elaborate on this point. So when you have some device in your home, for example, this air conditioner is going to be installed in your home, and your home may or may not have a smart hub to connect all the smart home appliances. So your system should be designed in such a way that it should be operable in both the conditions. The third thing is that suppose your cloud connectivity goes out of the way and your internet connectivity goes out of the way due to some kind of failure in your network layer, then you should have an operation, a capability in the system that you can override all these smart algorithms. So what I mean to say, suppose you have an air conditioner, then at least you should have minimum feature in hand which should always be operable, that you can control the air conditioner. If you can't control the air conditioner and you have only the way to control the air conditioner via Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or this what we call it, the cloud service, then if something goes wrong, your air conditioner will be out of operation. So it should never happen. You should always have a manual override kind of capability. The third thing is about the hardware design. So we talked about the device, how we are going to commission the device and how we are going to manage the device and control the device. Now let's talk about the hardware design. The very first thing that we consider while designing the hardware is that the power budget. I already spoke about most of these points yesterday, and today we are going to, today the reason why I'm recapping as well as reinstating these points, because we are going to see all these points covered in the features or in the products that we are going to add up in our architecture. So the first thing in hardware design is power budget. Our system should always operate under the given power budget that we have. The second thing is cost effective. The hardware should be cost effective as well. If your system has so many features but it is not cost effective, then you may not be able to really compete in the market. Third thing is efficient sensor fusion. Every Internet of Things device has sensors integrated to it. So it should be easy to integrate sensors into your hardware. Fourth thing is that you should, the device that you are going to use in your hardware should have all the certifications, or it should be able to get certified, because without having a certified system, you can't really introduce it in the market. Next is the software design. After hardware, we consider about the software. In software, there are two things that we should always consider when we are designing any kind of IoT system. First thing, it should seamlessly integrate with the cloud, because eventually you are going to use cloud. So it should be easily integratable to the cloud as well as local modules if you have any. Second thing is, sometimes what happens when you design any product, sometimes today when you are designing and you have chose a particular chip or particular microcontroller for your design, and maybe tomorrow that company stops making that particular chip, or if you have some other design considerations or some other features that you want to implement which is possible only on some other microcontroller, then you should design your software in such a way that it can be easily ported to the other platform. If it is going to take a lot of time to port to the other platform, then you are really going to have a lot of problems. So these two aspects we always see or always consider when we are going to design the software aspect of the IoT system. The next part is the cloud computing. So when we are choosing the cloud platform or when we are choosing the cloud architecture, the very first thing that comes in our mind, which is linked with the scalability, is that because initially you may or may not have so many number of devices, right? So when you are scaling up, when you are adding up more devices in your system, your cloud service should be able to incorporate it. This is the first thing in the Elastic usage. And second thing, initially when you don't have so many devices into your system, at that time, you shouldn't be really spending so much money on your cloud because you don't really are using that much bandwidth of the cloud. So it should always be an elastic, a balance between features as well as the cost. The second thing is about the cloud computing is it should be easily integratable to the analytics and machine learning AI or some other software algorithm that you are going to run over there. It should be easily integratable and it should be easily operable. The third thing is lower code footprint. So what I mean from this point is that your software that you are going to run on the cloud should not be very heavy. It should be optimum. It shouldn't be too heavy. It shouldn't be too low. So it should be in such a way that it is a balanced approach between the features that you are going to target and the addition that you are going to make. The next part is about the mobile and smart assistant integration. So again, in this part also, the very first thing is seamless integration. Second thing is easy authentication, especially when we talk about the mobile devices, and since security is our major concern. So our mobile application should always be able to log in through an authentication cycle. It shouldn't be like anyone can log into your system and can operate your system. It shouldn't be like that. Next thing, when you are designing your smart assistant integration, you should always focus on integrating it with the most popular home assistant scenarios. For example, Alexa or Google Assistant are the most prominently used assistants nowadays. So you should be integrating that one first. Later on, you can have feature for incorporating others as well. But initially, you should think of integrating the major one. And if you recall this point, I just put up this point that your system should be able to bring up as soon as possible. And in order to do this, what we generally consider that we should always try to use as many, that kind of architecture which is reusable so that you can use your hardware as well as software modules from previous project or from somewhere which is easily available. And you should always be able to, in software, you should always be able to use up as many APIs as possible so that you are not writing anything from scratch or minimum things from scratch. The next thing for the fast bring up is you always need to balance out what is going to be your minimalistic design and what is going to be your minimal viable product that you are going to target for fast bring up. So these are the major considerations that a designer always keeps in mind. Let's recap. So it's the device management, device control, hardware design, software design, and your cloud design, and your smart assistant and mobile platform design, and fast bring up. So these are the major considerations that a designer should always keep in mind. Okay, so before going to the next point, let me explain, what are we going to see? So our architecture is going to have three layers, three major layers. One is the edge, where we'll have our air conditioner, and then we will talk about which microcontroller we are going to use, which RF integration we are going to use, which connectivity protocol we are going to use. and then we'll talk about the cloud. I mean, today we'll see how the cloud computing works and how we can integrate or achieve that thing using AWS IoT platform. So we'll also talk about AWS IoT platform. And from that platform only, how can we integrate a mobile application as well as an Alexa application? So we'll talk about all these three and four parts, and then we'll see the integrated architecture. Okay, so coming to the edge architecture. So here I'm going to explain what microcontroller and connectivity we are going to use, and I'm going to explain why I specifically chose this particular device. So as you can see, the first item that I have listed over there is that it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth module. Before explaining all these, let me explain what this module is. So basically, this is a module which has a microcontroller as well as some RF modules integrated into it. The reason why I chose a module over a microcontroller or a discrete component is that it will save our time. It will save our effort in designing hardware, because designing hardware is a challenging part. And this module is already certified by all the certifications that your device really need to see before going to the market. So in order to cut down all these timings and cut down all these costs that is wasted, that may be invested based on your development time and all these, I chose this module. And let me explain what are the features of this module. I already talked about why I chose this module. So first thing is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth compatibility. Now the question arises why I chose two things. Why not just Wi-Fi modules? Because it's easy to find out MCUs or the modules with Wi-Fi connectivity only. But if you want to have some ICs or some system on chip or some modules with more than one connectivity, then you have to pay more. Now, why am I paying? Why am I ready to pay more? The reason is, if you remember, in my system architecture considerations, I mentioned about that it should be able to operate with the hub and without hub. This is one reason why I chose this design. I will explain how it is going to address that point when I'm talking about architecture. Second thing is, you should have a capability of overriding your cloud-based application, and if need arises, you should be able to control it manually. So generally, your system operates in conjunction with the router via Wi-Fi. So if you don't have a hub in your home, you can use it through your router by Wi-Fi. And if you have your hub in your home, for example, SmartThings or some other hub, then you can connect it using Bluetooth. The second reason why I chose Bluetooth in addition to Wi-Fi is that I can use my mobile phone as a local remote. So if I'm sitting in the room where my Bluetooth range is available, I can control the device using my phone or using my local Bluetooth based remote. And if I'm in the other corner of my house where I have the Wi-Fi coverage and my both air conditioner as well as my phone both are on the same Wi-Fi access point, then I can access it locally using that Wi-Fi access point. So that's the reason why I chose to have both the protocols, because it was a very small addition in the cost, but it was going to give me a lot of feature when I'm going to really sell it in the market. Second thing, I already touched upon this point, the reason why I chose this module instead of going for discrete components like microcontroller and RF modules separately and then designing a new hardware. So this module will save me the time of designing the hardware as well as complexities that are associated with it. The third thing why I chose this particular module is that it has more than 30 GPIOs. So with the GPIOs, I can integrate lots of stuff from the external world. So even if today in version 1, I have say 4 or 5 things that I want to integrate, I have this capability of adding up more features in near future. That's the reason why I kept this module, and instead of choosing a smaller module, I chose this module to have future integrations in mind. Next reason is that it has different connectivity options for like I2C, SPI, UART. Basically, these three are some of the major serial interfaces that are required to interface sensors. So I chose a module that supports many interfaces. The next reason why I chose this module was the low power management capability. So since the power budget is one of the major constraints while designing a system. So we are choosing a module that has low power management capabilities, and it can go into sleep mode or in a deep sleep mode when there is no operation happening on the microcontroller. Next thing is cost effective. So here I have mentioned two things. First thing, in the short term as well as in the long term. In the short term, okay, before telling this, let me tell you the price of this module. So this module costs somewhere around 4 to 5 US dollars. However, if you take out all the discrete components and have your own hardware, then it may cost you somewhere around $3 or $2. However, you have to add up the time and the effort that goes into research and development. So in the short term, since I need a fast bring up, I don't care much about the cost. I can use this module as it is in my design. And for initial volumes, I can run my production with these modules. And if I see that I'm going to scale and my product is really very popular and I'm going to have large volumes, then I can simply disassociate some of the things from this module, or I can just replicate this design from the discrete components. So I can bring up my product very fast, enter it into the market. In the meantime, in my R&D team, I can work on kind of designing this module or this module kind of capabilities from the discrete component. So that's why it is cost effective. So it was important to explain this point. Next reason why I chose this particular module is that it supports free RTOS and especially Amazon free RTOS. It is a certified device. So whatever Amazon cloud related aspects that you want to achieve or access from your node, you can do it easily by using this free RTOS, which runs on this particular device. Next thing is certification. So it is certified by all the required alliances or all the required certifications. So that's the reason why I chose this MCU, and the reason why I spent reasonable amount of time to explain this, because it is going to be the backbone of our system. Next thing on the edge is the firmware. Firmware is the software that is going to run on our system or our MCU. So as I just mentioned in my previous slide, that it can run free RTOS. So the reason why I'm using free RTOS for my firmware is that it can easily integrate with the Amazon cloud related offerings, and specifically Amazon core AWS IoT core. So that is the major entry point for the IoT related cloud services in AWS. And this free RTOS has APIs and software examples that easily integrate it with the AWS cloud platform. Second thing is, it is very easy to port this operating system based software to other chips. So if you remember, while talking about the design considerations, I spoke about that thing, that our system should be portable. The software should be portable to the other device if need arises. So this choosing Amazon free RTOS also addresses that point. Then it has pre-validated IoT reference integration. So that means it has lots of free or pre-validated examples. So you can just use those examples, just tweak out few things, and then you can use that reference code for your requirement. So it will really save you a lot of time and effort. And it is very easy to integrate sensors because there are lots of APIs and algorithms available as a reference example on FreeRTOS. So you can make use of that. Then sensor fusion. For the sensor side, on the edge, I'm going to have multiple sensors. So for example, I'm going to have MEMS. So MEMS is really going to detect if there is any issue with the fins of my air conditioner, to have the self-diagnostic kind of thing. So basically sensors here are majorly used for self-diagnostic kind of application. Then we have the pressure sensor. So what pressure sensor is going to do in the system, that in case if your filter is clogged, then there will be a pressure difference between your duct and your fins. So it will sit over there, and then it can monitor if there is a buildup of pressure, and it can tell that your filter is clogged and you need a service. It will also have an air quality sensor. It will also help in monitoring the clogging or any kind of issues with your airflow. If there is some kind of uh, some kind of dusting or some cleaning is required in your system or in your air con, so it will detect that. It will also have some humidity sensor as well as some aqua switches as well that will help in detecting if there is a leakage of water. Sometimes this problem happens in the air conditioner, so it will help us in monitoring that kind of issues before things are going to be worse. And it will have thermostat, so every air conditioners have thermostat, so it will also be integrated with the thermostat. So we are going to have these sensors integrated in our edge architecture. So these 4 points, 4 major points we have to consider when we are going to design the edge part of this smart air conditioner. So we spoke about the hardware, we spoke about the firmware, we spoke about the sensor. So we have to take care of all these aspects, and then we'll talk about uh, how this architecture will work locally in your home. So in next slide, I will show you that. So let's spend some time in understanding how this architecture is really working. So you can see, let me turn on my cursor. Okay. So you can see, this is my air conditioner, or this is the thing that is sitting inside my air conditioner. That is the MCU module, which we just spoke about, which is connected to different sensors over serial interface, and some algorithm as well as software is running inside this MCU, which is always monitoring the sensors and always connected with different controllable devices. So let's go one by one to different devices that it is connected to. So this WAP is basically the wireless access point, or the Wi-Fi router of your home. So basically this guy comes into picture even if you have a hub available in your home or if you don't have any hub available in your home. So let's say you don't have a hub available at your home, then your MCU, which has free RTOS and it has to connect to the cloud. So the way it will get connected to the cloud is via this WAP, the wireless access point. So it will provide the internet connectivity to this module, the air conditioner, and then it will talk to the internet and then to the cloud. And when we will talk about the integrated architecture, I will explain it again how this entire flow will take place. And you can see that I have shown it in a dotted kind of boundary. The reason why I showed it in a dotted kind of boundary, because it may be present, it may not be present. So suppose you have hub already present in your house, then your air conditioner will be connected directly to your hub. Let me explain something related to the hub. I mean, why we generally use a hub. The reason why we use hub in the houses or in a smart home kind of scenario is that hub gives us a lot of features. Like you can group lots of devices, you can create groups, you can create some kind of actions if then else kind of conditions over there, and you can manage many number of devices at one application. Other if you don't have hub, then for every device you need to have a separate application. But if you have hub, then you can have 50 devices for say, and all the 50 devices will be controlled directly by one application, that will be the hub application. So if you have a hub, then your device will be connected to your hub based on Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, whatever connectivity option that hub is giving to you. And this hub can be connected directly to the cloud, or it can go to the cloud or the internet via your wireless access point. That depends on what kind of hub you are going to use. So these were like how your module will go or connect to the cloud. So it may connect via the wireless access point, or it may connect via a hub, and this hub may connect via wireless access point, or this hub can directly be connected to the cloud. Now you have your mobile phone, and since your module supports both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so as I already mentioned that if you want to control your system locally, right now we will talk about the local operation, not the remote application, like when you're in your office and you want to control your air condition. We won't talk about that right now. Later we'll talk about when we will show you the integrated diagram. So this air conditioner can be controlled directly by the phone via Bluetooth. So if you have Bluetooth if you are in Bluetooth range, then you can just connect your phone to the air conditioner via Bluetooth, and you can just remotely connect. You can just control it from a distance. And if you are out of your Bluetooth range, then you can go via this wireless access point. So your phone will be connected to the same wireless access point, and your air conditioner module is also connected to the same wireless access point. And then by this path, you have two-way access again. So that's how your system on the edge is really going to integrate and work with each other. And I already spoke about different components that we are going to use in this edge, and I already explained why we have chosen certain architecture or why we have chosen certain way of doing the thing, so that we are in line with the requirements that came from the user, as well as we are in line with the requirement or the considerations that the designer had. So let's now go to the cloud. Mhm. Okay. So before jumping to the nitty gritty of the cloud, let's talk about a little bit on how AWS IoT platform works, or what are different offerings from AWS IoT, because we are going to use AWS IoT in our architecture. So this is the three-layer architecture. So you have, or you can say it is a four-layer architecture, which if you remember yesterday when I spoke about the IoT ecosystem, I showed you node, then access, then I showed you the cloud, and then I showed you the interaction layer, right? So the node was your edge device, then your access was your gateway, then cloud was your backend, and then you had that interaction point, which was the application. So I can show you all those four things in this diagram. So this is your node. So here you can see different kind of devices shown over there. So this image is just to make you understand what are different offerings from IoT and how these work. So it will only take 2 minutes. And this is your gateway. So this is your access layer. So your device connects to your gateway, and then from your gateway, it gets connected to your cloud. And these are the major components of AWS IoT cloud offerings. So here they have shown only four, but currently they have 7 or 8 offerings from AWS IoT portfolio. So this is AWS IoT Core. This is device man. So this basically manages all your access to other devices. So basically AWS IoT Core is connecting your device to other AWS edge device or other IoT edge device, as well as it is also connecting you to the other AWS offerings. AWS device management is for device management, which we spoke initially that you should be able to take care of your fleet, you should be able to scale it, you should be able to remove or add in new nodes. So all these things are done by this guy. Then you have IoT device defender. So it is something like antivirus on the IoT cloud. Then you have analytics. So it is basically used to make sense of data, to make you have the visual look of the data and management of the data. Then there are few more components that comes from AWS, which is not per se part of AWS IoT, but these are cloud-based application which you use like machine learning. You can make use of databases. You can make use of computation that is available on the cloud side. So this guy, the AWS IoT offerings are giving you an access to all the offerings that are available on the cloud. And then from the cloud, you can go to the IoT applications, which may be running on your phone, which may be running on your Alexa, which may be running on some other cloud or some other remote server, which may be running on some desktop application. So that's how this AWS IoT platform really works, or that's how the AWS cloud related stuff works. So let's go to the our architecture, because we are going to use some part of it, not everything out of it. Okay, so the cloud architecture. So the very first part or the most important part is our AWS IoT core. As the name itself suggests, it's the core. And what this guy really does, it gives you a secure connection or a secure access between your device, your end node, to other edge devices as well as other AWS related offerings, other AWS related softwares or the cloud based softwares that you are going to make use of. So here you can configure your system, you can authenticate your device. So whenever you have a new device coming to your ecosystem, and if it wants to access any infrastructure of your entire architecture, then it always has to go through AWS IoT Core. It cannot go without getting a nod from AWS IoT Core. It only AWS IoT Core can allow or disallow that whether the edge device will have access to anything else or not. And the next point emphasizes on the security aspect, that it is end-to-end encrypted. Here you can transfer, you can, here we have one thing that is called the rules engine. So in AWS IoT Core, we have something called IoT rule engine. And with the rules engine, what you can do, you can actually analyze or act upon data on the AWS IoT Core itself. So suppose your application is not that sophisticated or it's not that resource intensive, that you can do all those kind of computation inside AWS IoT Core itself without incurring any extra cost. And it really makes easy for a user or for an end device to access any kind of feature of your AWS offering. So that's the main thing. Your AWS IoT Core is something like an enabler for your edge devices to access any of the cloud computing platform that is available on AWS. And then the next thing is AWS IoT management. So what this guy really does, there is something, actually, there is a thing called registry. So you have to maintain a registry. You can think of something like how our attendance system works in the college. If somebody has attended a college or if somebody is a student in a college, they will have some registry or they will have their database already registered with the institution. So same way you can drive out the analogy. Your AWS IoT device management will have the registry with which you can register, organize, monitor, or remotely manage. From remotely manage, what we mean, you can remove any device, you can add in a new device, you can check the health of the device. So your entire fleet management is happening through AWS IoT device management offering of AWS IoT. So that is one of the most important aspects. And the fourth point that comes under AWS IoT device management is the over-the-air firmware upgrade. So you remember I spoke about feature upgradation. So in future, if you have to upgrade any feature, that will go through this AWS IoT device management device. Next is your AWS IoT device defender. So it is something uh, like we have Norton or we have some endpoint kind of antivirus that is running on our PC, right? So what that guy does, that guy really keeps on checking our system for any kind of malware. So same thing is taken care by AWS IoT device defender. It is something like an antivirus. So it does three major tasks. First thing, it keeps itself updated with the latest changes or latest offerings that has come in relation to the best practices from the security point. And then it audits. It basically audits your devices, whether every device is in compliance with those best practices or not. And in case any of the device is not in compliance with those security parameters, then it will send a notification to indicate that that device may be malfunctioning or may be compromised. And if a device is compromised, then it also checks what level of damage has already been done so that it can guide the system or your architecture or your other dashboard that, okay, that particular device is compromised and this is what you can do in order to take care of its health. Another important thing that this AWS IoT Defender does is that it looks for vulnerability, like which particular device in your system may be compromised. So it is something like predictive maintenance. So if it sees that, okay, this device may be compromised in future, then it will tell you that, okay, take care of that device as soon as possible. And then once you have everything already connected, so your edge is already connected to your AWS cloud platform by AWS IoT Core. You are able to manage your devices using AWS device management, and you are able to secure your devices and take care of any kind of virus attack using your device. So that means your devices are available and they are generating the data. Now we have to make use of that data. So in order to make use of that data, we have a tool called AWS IoT Analytics. So this tool is something similar to implementation of AI and machine learning algorithm. In addition, but the one important aspect is that they have tweaked these algorithms to suit to IoT related requirements, so that if, because IoT has different kind of requirement and big data kind of things have different kind of requirement. So it already has APIs inbuilt so that you can implement all these algorithms easily, right? And it also helps you in organizing your data, and it's storing it into your S3 bucket. I will talk about S3 bucket later on. From S3 bucket, you can think that in your database in such a way that your data is optimally kind of compressed or optimally organized, so that it is going to eat up as low as possible memory. So that means it will also optimize your memory requirement. So that's what your AWS IoT Analytics is going to do. It is going to organize your data. It is going to run some algorithm on top of it. And it is also going to give you a graphical or user identifiable representation of data, so that you can drive out or you can make some sense of the results that you are seeing. Then you have another thing which is called AWS IoT Events. So what this guy does, so when you have data, you have to take some actions based on that data, and that is the reason why you created that IoT system. Let's take an example. In the smart aircon, suppose the sensor data is going out of the range. So suppose your humidity sensor or your what aqua switch is telling you that there is a higher level of humidity, or there is some water that is detected. So what action you have to take? You have to directly inform the company that this device is malfunctioning and there is some kind of mechanical or electrical issues in the device. So in order to do that, earlier you used to do it manually, or you used to write an algorithm or some software to do this for you. But now in AWS IoT, there is a thing called AWS IoT Events, which takes that data from the sensors, and you have to actually write a program which is very easy to write. And it actually, based on the program, if else kind of condition, whatever you have written, it takes the action, and it can easily indicate the user, the company, that okay, this particular node installed at this particular address is malfunctioning, and this is the issue that we are seeing in the system. Please go and check it out. So that's how it works. Then there is another important thing which is not part of AWS IoT offering, but it is part of AWS cloud computing platform. That is AWS Lambda function. So what AWS Lambda function is, it's something like a small function that you generally call. For example, if you design a software, you have some functions which you call based on some event. So you can create any kind of function that can be triggered by AWS Lambda. So whenever you have some event, you can trigger a AWS Lambda function, and then that AWS Lambda function, it is very powerful tool actually, AWS Lambda. So it can invoke so many functionalities in your cloud computing platform, and it can really give you access to lots of stuff in your AWS cloud computing platform. Then this is AWS S3 data bucket. So what this guy does, this is basically a storage solution from Amazon, which is sitting on the cloud. So when you have data, so you have to store that data somewhere, right? So we'll be using Amazon S3 for storing our data. There's a reason why we chose Amazon S3, because they have some other, but Amazon S3 is cheaper, and you can query. Okay, actually, whenever you have a database, you have to query to get some access to the data. So Amazon S3 actually gives us a very good balance between cost and the speed of searching for the data. So instead of going for a higher cost DynamoDB or some other database, we are using Amazon S3, and it is basically a storage service. For a layman, this much information is good enough. Then there is another thing called IAM policy. So basically, IAM policy is a short name for access management. So in your AWS cloud platform, you have to give access. So you have say so many number of devices, right? And based on, okay, let me explain you in other way. Suppose you have 3 or 4 models of the conditioner, and all the 3 or 4 models have same hardware integrated into it, but to market it, you have opened some functionality in one model and some functionality in other model, right? So suppose one model supports only bare minimum functionality and some other model, which is superior model, have more functionality. Since hardware is same and software is similar, you if you don't have any access management kind of thing, then your lower model or your upper model both will be able to access the same resources in your cloud computing. So there won't be any distinction between which is the better model and which has the low number of features. So in that case, this IAM policy comes very handy. So here you can configure that which device or which node will have what kind of accesses from your Amazon cloud services, because eventually you are going to tackle lots of sophisticated things in the cloud. And SNF is another important aspect. So you remember I mentioned about when I was telling about the device defender, then I told that if there is a compromise in a device, so if a device is attacked by a malware, then it has to send notification. So it uses SNS, simple notification services, to really invoke some notifications to the user or to some other places. So that's how these cloud related components we are going to see now. And next slide, we will talk about mobile application that will also be running on the cloud platform and using the Amazon cloud offerings. And then we'll talk about the integrated platform. So in order to have this remote mobile access, so what we do, we have a mobile application that is running on your phone. And then in order to authenticate, we need something, right? So this Amazon Cognito is one of the module that is an offering from Amazon from the cloud services, which is used for authentication. So once a user wants to log in to certain ecosystem or to a certain uh, cloud offering or a IoT offering, then this software will be used for authentication. And the reason why we chose this particular Amazon Cognito, because it is very easily integratable to your social media platform. So nowadays, everybody is on Facebook or in Google or these kind of platforms. And whenever we are going to log in or we want to get into any kind of application, we try to use our social media account to log in. So it is very easy to integrate those social media accounts and then run authentication on top of that. And it's not just a single layer authentication. There are multiple layer of authentications on different aspects, from a user login to access to the cloud, then access to the APIs. At all these levels, there is a new layer of authentication mechanism that is between user or the cloud. Everything is kind of encrypted end to end. And another important aspect that when you use these cloud platforms, it's very easy to write the code. You don't really need to know nuisances of Android or iOS development. They have their own console where you can go and simply write your code. API gateway is actually the next step in this remote architecture, remote mobile access architecture. So once the user is authenticated from the Amazon Cognito block, then they can invoke different APIs from this API gateway, and then we will have some Lambda functions which will be really doing the real function. Because whenever you are going through a mobile app, there are few predefined applications or predefined things that you have to run, right? So all these things, three things, or all these things pass through this API gateway and then invoke the Lambda function, which eventually will invoke some functionalities that you want to see. Okay. Okay. So before jumping to next slide, which is the integrated architecture, let me recap of the things that we are going to use from the cloud platform. We already talked about the edge platform. So in the cloud platform, we are going to use AWS IoT Core, which is going to be an access point of our edge devices to the other AWS cloud offerings as well as the other IoT edge devices that are connected in that network. The second important thing was the AWS IoT Device Manager. So that AWS IoT Device Manager makes your life easy making you able to use your fleet. So you can have your devices registered to your database, and then you can easily monitor or you can easily manage those devices. You can deregister or re-register. You can remove some of the devices. You can check if some device is not operational for a while. So all these kind of things you can do by the device manager. Then we saw that we are going to make use of device defender, which is like an antivirus that will make sure that none of our edge devices are compromised. And then we looked into analytics, the AWS IoT analytics. So when you have the data, then in order to make sense of that data, you will run the analytics using AWS IoT analytics. And then after that, we also checked about two or three more things like Lambda functions. Then we talked about the S3 storage related stuff. We talked about the IAM policy, and we talked about the SNS for sending notifications. So all these things we are going to use for our cloud architecture. And for our mobile architecture, for authentication, we are going to use Amazon Cognito. And for gateway access or for API access, we are going to use API gateway, which will invoke Lambda function. And Lambda function can really invoke any kind of cloud computing. So let's go to the integrated architecture. We spoke about edge, we spoke about the cloud, we spoke about the remote mobile access architecture. I didn't explain the Alexa based thing right now, but I will explain it in the next slide when we will see the integrated architecture. So here is the integrated architecture, and let me explain how this architecture really works and how data flows from one end to other end. So as you can see, suppose this is our air conditioner. So here is our mobile application. So when the air conditioner comes to your house and when you are going to install, at that time, the very first thing that you have to do is to register your device with the AWS IoT platform. Otherwise, how will you identify whether it is an authorized device or not? For that, what we will do, in our microcontroller, which is sitting over here, inside the device, we will actually in AWS IoT or in any kind of secure communication for device registry, we create some certificates, right? And we create some registries. So what we will do, the company or the manufacturer, they initially what they do whenever the product is going from their production cycle, generally you might have seen that on every product there is a serial number. So what is serial number? Serial number is a unique identifier, right? So same way they will have some unique identifier, which will be basically the registry certificate that will be already present in the because there will be some two things. One is X509 certificate that will be there, and then there will be some encryption algorithms already implemented over there so that nobody or no external malicious person gets hold of our data or our registry data. So when the device comes to somebody's houses, they power it up and then they connect it using their mobile application. So once they connect it using their mobile application, so these two guys can communicate with each other. That means you can access different functionalities of the microcontroller from your phone. And from there, you will basically invoke one API inside that microcontroller, which will eventually go through your wireless access point and eventually reach your cloud. So just to reiterate one more thing, if you remember, I mentioned that we are going to make use of Amazon free RTOS. And the reason why we are using Amazon free RTOS, because that has APIs which can help us in certifying itself, registering itself, and accessing the AWS IoT core. So that API will be invoked, and I'm currently showing the hubless operation, so I don't use hub over here. So it will connect to the wireless access point, and then it will connect to internet, and from there it will ping to the server of AWS IoT core, and from there it so this is your AWS IoT core. So AWS IoT core is the backbone which has 5 or 6 elements inside it. So in order to access the device management, the data has to go through device gateway. So first it will authenticate that whether this guy, the edge device, has the required certificate or not. You remember I mentioned that it will always access anything from this cloud platform through AWS IoT core, and everything will happen only once it is authenticated. So this guy, the device gateway and this authentication block, this will make sure that things the thing which is trying to connect is authentic, and then only it will allow it to go to the IoT device management, so that the IoT device management can check and verify whether it is a registered device or not. So that's how the registry will take place. So this is the path that it will follow. And now your air conditioner is registered with your cloud. So this is the first step that the user has to do. After that, whenever there is now your air conditioner is running and say it is generating some data, and then this data is again end-to-end encrypted, and here the data is transferred through a protocol called MQTT. So your message is encrypted, and it is following the MQTT format, which is also encrypted by TLS v1.2. Actually, there are lots of technical terms that I'm using. I'm not sure how many of you guys are aware of it, and I'm trying to make sure as much explanation as much I can give. But if you have some queries later on, maybe you can Google out, or maybe you can post some queries to the WhatsApp group, so that if there are few queries, they can be consolidated and given to me. Okay, so let me go back to the place where I left. So now there is some data which is generated by your air conditioner or your customer's device. So that data goes through your encryption, and then it first reaches your AWS IoT core, and then this AWS IoT core will check. This message broker actually comes into picture then, because this message broker is actually taking care of MQTT related stuff. So this message broker will check what data it has got, and then based on the data, it will see whether it has to pass it to rule engine or not. So if there is something abnormal, then it will pass it to the rule engine, and if there is some kind of abnormality, then it will go to the rule engine, and from there it will invoke some kind of lambda function which will eventually notify you if there is something wrong with it, right? So this is another operation when the data is getting generated, and if there is some problem with the data or there's something alarming, this is how it is going to work. Next thing is how it addresses the robustness. So suppose you lost your connection, the cloud lost its connection from the edge device. So there's something called device shadow. So what happens? The last known state of that device is actually saved over there. And based on that, rest of the things which are available in AWS cloud platform will take action. And as soon as this guy comes back into connectivity, then this device shadow will be updated with the latest value of the edge device, the latest status of the edge device. So we spoke about the device management. We spoke about how the messages are broken or how the messages are taken care of. We also spoke about authentication, that whenever this guy tries to go anywhere or access anything, it has to go pass through this authentication block. And registry block is actually related to this device management. So initially this device gateway, authentication, message broker, and registry, all these comes into picture, and then they kind of strike out some balance with the IoT device management related stuff, and then you really see how this device is configured and how this device is really registered. Now let's talk about how this IoT device defender is working. So again, your IoT device defender is connecting to your actual edge device via IoT core. So everything will pass through this IoT core. So whenever there is some issue, then you will see a SNS kind of notification being generated. So this defender will also walk through this IoT core only. Now, if you want to, now your data is there, right? So now when you have to save the data, it has to go to S3, the Amazon S3, right? I just mentioned about S3 bucket. So there is something called Kinesis hose. Actually, I didn't speak about it because this guy sometimes required, sometimes not required to be connected to S3. So if you have to run S3 with an AWS IoT core, you have to have another block that is called Kinesis Firehose, which really enables your AWS IoT core to push that data to the S3. So whatever data is getting generated, if that data is useful based on the some rules that you have created over here to really filter out some of the data. So if that data is useful, it will go to the S3 bucket via Kinesis Firehose. So here your data is getting saved. Now again, you have that data which is getting generated, and this AWS IoT analytics is actually looking into that data, and then based on that data, it may take some action and it may run some of the algorithms inside. So I haven't shown separate blocks for machine learning or IoT or AI kind of algorithms, because all these algorithms are running inside this block, because all those are IoT related algorithms, not the general algorithm. So all those algorithms are running over here. And if you want to see that data in a graphical user interface kind of thing, then you use the AWS QuickSight. So this is used for seeing the data, how the data really looks like, and if there is some abnormality in the graph. So that's how your data is getting made use of by AWS IoT Analytics and AWS IoT QuickSight. So we spoke about this guy, we spoke about this guy, we spoke about this guy, and these two guys as well. So this is the major operation, and then this IoT events, I already mentioned it in my cloud explanation that there is a dedicated event handler which also works based on the sensor data that you are getting. So entire data is getting via this AWS IoT core, and this AWS IoT event is actually checking the data that are getting generated by different nodes. And if there is some issue with some of the data, or if it sees any kind of abnormalities, then it generates some events and notifies based on some, okay, you can actually add in an SNS block if you want to, that it can generate some notifications, or it can again from here it can go to any Lambda function, and then it can really invoke any other function. So you can have some SNS notifications, as well as you can have some additional uh, cloud computing related blocks which may be triggered by this Lambda function. So so these were the things related to the cloud. So this guy, this guy, and all these guys are basically the cloud related stuff. And this portion is for, again, for registry. And this portion actually comprises of two parts. I already spoke about IAM. So basically, this one tells about, okay, let me explain you how this guy works. So suppose your customer device wants to say say go to this particular functionality, and that particular model of the device doesn't have capability or doesn't have feature of this guy. So by right it is already implemented, but before going there it will pass through your IAM policy, and if that policy is allowed, then only it will provide access to those specific operations which are a bit costly, or which are only meant for higher version of your device. So these were things related to your cloud platform, how your AWS IoT cloud platform is going to work with your AWS IoT edge device in order to make sense of that data and make use of whatever application that you want to run. This block is about the mobile application or the mobile access that we just spoke about in previous slide. So here you have your mobile application which is running on your device, which is always have internet connectivity. So whenever you launch that particular application, which is meant for your air conditioner, smart air conditioner, so first it will authenticate whether you are required user or the allowed user or not. And if you are allowed, then whatever operation that you have kind of triggered from your mobile user interface, that will go through your API gateway, and based on whatever Lambda function is associated with that API, that particular Lambda function will be triggered. So for example, if you want to see some data from your uh, from your from your device, so you will access it like this. I mean, you will launch the application, you will enter, then you will ask that I want to see that data. Then that Lambda function will go to your S3 bucket and pull out that particular data which you can see. And if you want to access your device remotely, then what will happen? You will again log in. You will, based on whatever command that you have given, that API will be called, and accordingly that Lambda function will be called. Which, suppose you have to turn off your air conditioner, so it will first go to AWS IoT Core, because in order to interface with this guy, you always have to go, if you are going through cloud platform, you always have to go through AWS IoT Core. So you will go to AWS IoT Core, and from there you will really take this path. So that's how you are going to make use of your mobile application, and that's how your mobile application is really going to work, and how it is going to be integrated with your cloud platform, and how you are going to really connect to your edge device securely via your cloud platform. Now let's talk about how you will integrate Alexa if you have to integrate. So you will have your smart speaker sitting somewhere in your house or anywhere in your phone. Also, if you don't have a smart speaker, you can have Alexa application installed in your phone. So how Alexa really works? Alexa has its own cloud, Alexa Cloud. We call it Alexa Cloud, and they have something similar to apps which are called like skills. So skills really means applications, and these applications are running on the cloud, and these are AI based cloud applications. So when you invoke your required application or required operation from your Alexa device, be it smart speaker or be it your phone, so it will listen to the command that you have given through your voice. Then that voice will go to your Alexa Cloud, and then your Alexa Cloud will recognize what application you want to launch, and then it will invoke required API, which will eventually call a Lambda function, because Lambda function is coming into picture at several places, as you can see over here, because Lambda function is something like a function. So when you write a program, you have lots of functions. You just invoke that function from your main program body, and then that particular application is really done. So you can think of like a simple function. So this is a simple function which is associated with that particular skill, and this function knows what it has to do. So again, if you want to access your customer's device or your own home device, it will go through your Alexa Cloud. From Alexa Cloud, it will launch that skill, which is basically an application which is running on the cloud. That application will launch a Lambda function, which is eventually something like an event or an application or a particular function. And that function will then know what it has to do. And in order to reach to your customer device, it will go again via AWS IoT Core, so that, because whenever you operate anything, you will also get an acknowledgement, right? So everything will pass through this AWS IoT Core, so that we are ensured that everything is encrypted and everything is certified. So this is how this entire architecture is going to work. And I also tried to explain as much as possible the reasoning behind choosing certain component instead of choosing something else. So I have tried to strike out a balance between cost, between complexity, between the code footprint on the cloud side, so that you don't run out of any kind of balance. So here is your edge device. These are your cloud devices. This is your mobile application, and this is your Alexa application. So your mobile application is only this much. Your Alexa is only this much. Rest everything that you are seeing over here is running on the cloud. This is also on the cloud. This is also on the cloud. This is also on the cloud. Even your mobile app authentication, user authentication, and uh, application launching, everything is happening in the cloud. So you can see everything that we want to do remotely, or we want to really make use of data, or whatever sophisticated thing that we are trying to do is happening on the cloud in this scenario. Because on the device side, we have tried to use as minimum as possible footprint of the code and the hardware, because we don't really want to do lots of computation over here. Only some of the computation will happen over here. So that's how this complete architecture for this smart air conditioner will be. And you can actually replicate this architecture to any other application as well by just simply removing some of the blocks or adding some other blocks. The major takeaway point should be for you is an understanding of different components of a cloud architecture, especially in relation to the market leader, which is the AWS cloud platform, and how different components work, what are the advantages of different components, and how do we integrate different components in our IoT scenario, and how this AWS IoT related products can be used in the cloud, what different possibilities are there, and if we have to use Alexa or mobile app, how does these really work? How do you make sure that everything is secure, everything is authenticated? So all these things I tried to make sense of and try to explain to you. Okay, so now we'll talk about how this architecture has tried to address different considerations that we had when we were starting to design this architecture or this system. So security. So as you can see, at all the layers, we have tried to make sure that everything is secure. So on the device side, if device has to connect to the cloud, there is only one way to connect to the cloud, that is through the AWS IoT core. And in order to go through AWS IoT core, the device has to furnish the X509 certificate, which is generated and which is loaded when it is going to register itself, and that is done by the manufacturer when they are shipping the device. All the communication between device and the cloud, which is going through this MQTT protocol, is TLS 1.0. TLS is basically transport layer security protocol. So it is basically encrypted by that protocol so that end-to-end encryption is there. And then we also saw that there is a device defender, which always is monitoring your system, always monitoring your edge devices to make sure that none of the device is compromised. And if somebody wants to access their remote system or their system remotely via a mobile application, there also we have an authentication mechanism which is taken care by Amazon Cognito. So we are taking care of security and authentication on each and every layer of this architecture. Scalability point of view, we address by using the IoT device manager, with which you can actually I didn't spoke about one important aspect. Let me explain it now. So when you have to register one device, it is very easy to register it. But if you want to really have lots of devices getting registered at one point of time, then there is something called JITR. So this is one important feature which you can use to commission lots of things at one go. So you can really commission either single device or you can commission lots of device in one go. So your device manager is capable enough of really taking care of millions or even billions of devices. If you go from AWS perspective, they are ready to give you access or let you control millions or billions of the devices. Robustness. So from robustness point of view, you saw there is something called device shadow. So from device shadow, even if your edge device is not connected with the cloud, your cloud is aware of the previous known state. So if there is a query which is coming to the cloud to know about the state of that device, it won't be like device not available. It will always be telling the previous state of the device, so that if you want, I mean, there won't be any data loss as such from this entire registry. And similarly, on the edge side, if your connectivity goes out of the way from the from the cloud, then at that time you can have your Bluetooth as well as your Wi-Fi connectivity. If your Wi-Fi connectivity is not working, you have the Bluetooth connectivity with which you can control it remotely. So your device or your system is robust enough to work in any kind of scenario whenever there is a network outage. Then you can integrate it with the existing infrastructure. If you want to integrate it with Alexa, that is possible. If you want to connect it to your existing hub, I showed you that thing in detail when I was explaining the edge device architecture, that you have the Wi-Fi as well as Bluetooth connectivity. Generally, the smart hubs are connected via Bluetooth. So that's why we chose a scenario where we have Bluetooth as well as the Wi-Fi. So in that way, you can integrate it with the smart hub if you have, or if you don't have smart hub or you don't have hub, you can just connect it to wireless access point. And if you want to connect it to your Alexa or a mobile application, it is also quite easy to integrate it. And then in order to make use of data, you had AWS IoT Analytics, with which you can run AI or machine learning algorithms. And you have the AWS IoT quick site with which you can see or see the patterns or see the graph in order to see, I mean, how the data is really working. So that was all about today's session. So I tried to explain to you major things. Let me recap in a 1 minute frame. So we spoke about a product that we were planning to design, which was the smart air conditioner, where we wanted to have local as well as remote control. We wanted it to be integratable to the existing phenomena, as well as we wanted it to be have a we wanted it to be scalable. We wanted it to be robust, so that if there is no network coverage, it should work. There should be a manual override. All these kind of features user wanted to have. And from design considerations, we talked about how are we going to, what considerations we are going to make when we are going to talk about device management, when we are going to talk about device control, followed by how we should design the hardware, what we should think when we are designing the software. All these aspects we spoke about. We also spoke about the cloud and the scalability on the cloud side as well. Then we discussed about how we are going to implement our edge, which microcontroller module we are going to use. We discussed about why we chose that particular scenario, why we didn't choose something else. So all these things we spoke about. We also spoke about what cloud architecture we are going to use, what cloud components we are going to use, how are we going to access our remote device from a distant location using a mobile application or using a web application, how are we going to make use of Alexa. All these things we spoke about. I know it was lots of things to digest, but I think it might have given you a flavor of how things work, and it might have given you a basic understanding of how an IoT device works from edge to the cloud to the mobile platform to the smart home assistants, how this entire ecosystem really works in technical perspective. So that was all from today's session, and I will open up for the QA session. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Vikas sir. There is one question.
Mhm.
It's from Mr. Budev Singh. The question is it safe to store data on cloud of any organization? What if subscription could not be renewed? Could data be compromised?
Actually, that's a very good question, but it is more of an administrative question rather than a technical question, because they have data, right? So
Mhm.
it depends on what clauses you signed upon or what terms and conditions you signed upon when you started using their services. So
Mhm.
that is more of an administrative question. From technical point of view, yes, if they want, they will have all the data. But practically speaking, if I mean, there is no point for them to keep data, because it is going to really eat up a lot of space on their database or on their servers, right? So if you are not paying, why will they keep the data? But yeah, if somebody really wants to make use of your data, they can. So you have to make sure that when you are signing the terms and conditions, it is pretty clear whether they can keep it or not.
Okay. Any other question from any other participant? I guess that's it for today.
Mm-hmm.
There are not any more questions. Well, I have
Okay.
one question,
Okay.
and my question is that we have learned how to make any of our device IoT enabled.
Yeah.
So, as you had mentioned in the initial phase of this discussion, that you opted that particular device for certain reasons, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, do we have to ensure that whether that particular device would be compatible with that device which we are supposed to make IoT enabled? I mean, do we also need to check the compatibility between that device and this device? Like if we were talking about the example of air conditioner today. So do
Mm-hmm.
I also need to see air conditioner is compatible with that particular device with those many protocols, or we can simply go ahead with it?
Okay. I think there is some confusion. So the architecture that we spoke about today was a new air conditioner. So the air conditioner was designed based on that edge chip that I spoke about, that ESP chip that I spoke about. I believe what you are asking is if we have to kind of make an existing air conditioner being controlled through IoT. If am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So in that case, actually, your chip will be sitting outside, right? So it is not something that is going to be embedded inside your air conditioner, right? So in
Mhm.
that case, generally, what we have to consider, actually, there are lots of products like that are available. These are smart thermistors which are available in the market, and you have to design something like that. It should only have an on and off. I mean, generally, these air conditioners have an on and off kind of feature control from external device, not more than that. Because you don't know what protocol are they using, or
Yeah, yeah,
then
right.
the existing air conditioners won't have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or these kind of things.
Exactly, exactly.
So it will
So,
have an IR sensor, basically your module, your external
ex-
module, which you are going to
yes.
have, that you have to fix in
Yeah,
such a
right.
way that it has an IR connectivity,
Yeah.
and it can turn it on and turn it off based on the thermistor related result that it is getting locally.
Okay, okay. Uh, I guess that's it for today. Any other question from any participant? I can see they're all participants. The attendance link is not actually asking for number twice. There you may find one extra column for email ID. That it is of no use. So you just mention email ID once. That's it. So please go ahead with filling your attendance by clicking on the link. Nitish sir, I request you to please share the link once again.
We already shared.
Yeah, yeah, but it's not visible now, so that's why I'm asking. Please share it again. And those who have filled the attendance, kindly stay here because we are going to have the group photograph as well. And now I would request Vinita ma'am to present the vote of thanks for today's session.
Good evening,
Vinita
everyone.
ma'am.
It is much more worthwhile to implement only one bright idea than collecting a thousands of them. How wise and right words are these from Geraldo Benovac, the author of one of the famous books, Reasonably Through Life. Today, we all have gained this confidence of how to bring IoT in our lives and contribute in this society from our end. Thank you, Vikas sir, for helping us to take one giant leap in the IoT system designing, which seemed way far from our reach earlier. We are confident now that tomorrow's session will again feel so much thrill in us to explore this area further and further. Thank you everyone for your consistent, vigilant presence in this workshop and making it a success till now. Kindly do not forget to mark your presence as you all doing all the day through links shared in a chat box. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you all with your smiling faces again tomorrow. Thank you so much. Now I request everyone kindly turn on your videos for the group photograph. Everyone is ready today.
Yeah, we can see
Nice
that.
to see you all in
And
a ready form.
they are ready, but we would really appreciate if we can see smiling faces of everyone. Yeah, let us get some reason to smile amid this COVID crisis.